Good afternoon and welcome to BizTech's ASEAN Midday Market Watch. Our guest today is Jeff Halley. He's a senior market analyst, Asia Pacific for OANDA. Jeff, good afternoon and thanks for coming in.
Always a pleasure, Brian.
Now, let's take a quick look and see how markets in the region are performing have been performing this morning. Now, it's a kind of a mixed bag, actually. We've got the Nikkei, which is up marginally at 0.15% at 28,587.84. The Shanghai Composite is up. It's down 0.03% at 3,568.4. The Hang Seng is up 0.21 at 29,454.02. The ASX 200 back from public holiday is down 0.8% at 6,770.3. The Kospi is down 0.63% at 3,120.38. Now looking at closer to home, we've got Bursa Malaysia, which is up slightly 1.8%, and it's trading at 1,587.88. Over at the SGX, rounding it off, it's up 0.36% at 2,956.14. Jeff, what do you make of this morning's trading across the region?
Well, Brian, I think it's a continuation of the range trading that we saw very much evident in the North American session, where the major indices all pretty much closed unchanged. We saw commodities unchanged and most currencies were also unchanged. We seem to be on hold in financial markets in general ahead of this FOMC rate decision and subsequent statement and press conference afterwards. It's really going to set the tone for the markets this week. This morning we've seen a bit of a disjointed process because we saw excellent industrial profit climbing in China. Plus we also saw a House of Representatives.
That's right, it was up 20%. Right?
Yeah, correct. Showing that China itself is still emerging from this pandemic at a great rate of knots. By default, that will lift the countries in Asia around it. We saw a House of Representative tweeting that he was working on a bipartisan committee with regards to the Biden stimulus, and that he didn't think that it would, at this stage, go into reconciliation in the Senate. Reconciliation, for your viewers, is basically a bureaucratic nightmare that slows everything down. That's all you really need to know. It's a terrible headache. So that, I think, also lifted markets. China, I think we're seeing some more profit taking there after the PBOC official yesterday said he was worried about bubbles in the stock market. And I think generally we're seeing some profit taking also in big tech stocks in China as well. And that's why retail investors, and I think that is why it has diverged a bit from the rest of ASEAN.
Okay, I'm going to stay on the China theme right now. And, you know, the China growth story is definitely on track. And therefore, by default, Asia seems to be on track as well. Now, where else in Asia do you really see these sort of positive growth stories?
Well, it's definitely been a north-south divide in 2020. We've seen Japan stock markets do very well. So the export sector there has been doing very well. Same as South Korea, export sector has been doing excellently. The problem there is that domestic consumption in both of those countries hasn't really followed along. But that was a trend that we were seeing in both of those countries before COVID-19. So this is a continuation. Taiwan, huge exporter of technology, semiconductors. It's had an amazing year as well. South Korea has actually performed the best. ASEAN, which has got a much heavier weighting in these legacy industries, banking and property and agriculture or resources, much more cyclical, have underperformed in 2020. But I feel that as long as they can get these vaccines out and keep COVID-19 from getting out of hand across the southern ASEAN nations, that we can see them outperform this year. By that, I mean your Singapores, your Indonesias, and your Malaysias.
Now, let's go back again to the FOMC meeting, which is really the key event everybody's watching out for this week. what is the expectation of markets and what potentially is going to be the impact on markets?
Well, I think the markets are sort of nervously unchanged at the moment. They are reluctant to commit one way or the other. I think the theme that we've seen this week is investors taking some risk off the board. Hence, we've seen the dollar rally a little bit, or really just bounce back and forth. We've seen equities edge lower. Gold has been, I think, exactly the same price for 3 days now. Oil is also almost unchanged over these last 3 days. So I think they're sitting and waiting, and that we are going to see some sort of strong move once the statement comes out. The key to it is the market is starting to get a bit nervous now about whether the Federal Reserve will bring forward their tapering schedule and start reducing quantitative easing, perhaps by the end of 2021. I think that is highly doubtful, but I think that in order for them to avoid some sort of mini taper tantrum, the Fed's going to have to be extremely dovish and try and put that thought to bed quite unceremoniously in the statement and in the press conference afterwards. Otherwise, we could see the dollar rally and we could see equities and commodities fall. If they do come out on message, so to speak, ultra dovish, then it should be a continuation of business as normal. Buy Asia, buy emerging markets, buy equities, and we'll probably see gold and oil both rally as well.
You know, Jeff, one sector that's not standing still is the tech sector. Microsoft numbers were stellar, and that's 14 successive quarters of double-digit growth. Now, is that a bellwether whether for tech stocks, especially with earnings for a major tech players coming up over the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, look, we've got a huge plethora of companies coming out this week and early next week. The main ones today will be Facebook and Apple, and I'm expecting stellar earnings from both of them. We just have to see how much business has moved online to things like Instagram or WhatsApp to get a hint of, in Asia anyway, to get a hint of what's been going on with Facebook. So I'm expecting Apple to put out a massive result as well, possibly 100 billion plus in revenues for Q4 ahead of those, the Christmas buying season, etc. Both of those companies are clearly benefiting from the work from home trend as well. We've got Tesla today. That should provide a bit of fireworks as well. I think if Tesla indicates that their vehicle deliveries this year, because no one cares about their profits, it seems, is around 950 to 1 million vehicles, excuse me, we could see Tesla take another run up again as well. So I think big tech and these frontier technology companies are going to produce stellar results, and that will be supportive for the S&P and the NASDAQ. Dow Jones is much more heavily in legacy cyclical industries, so it may not get the same tailwinds as those two.
Now, Jeff, thank you very much for speaking to us.
Always a pleasure.
To Jeffrey Halley, Senior Market Analyst, Asia Pacific at OANDA, on BizTech's ASEAN Midday Market Watch. I'm Brian Fernandez. Check out www.biztech.asia for business and technology conversations.